Okay, so I'm going to talk about women also, but I'm going to talk about the differences between the early Joseon and the late Joseon. So, um, when the dynasty was established, they wanted to have a dynasty based on Confucianism. And at the beginning of the dynasty, it wasn't very strong. Like they said that they will practice that, but like not fully practicing everything from the Confucian ideology. So the Joseon dynasty, Professor Pearson, he said the dynasties in Korea, they were long dynasties. So this one, it was the last one in Korea, was from 1392 to 1910. And as I said before, it was based on Confucian ideology. But it took a long time, like almost half of the dynasty, to really be fully Confucian. So the first part, of course, is the early dynasty. So this changes of Confucianism brought a lot of different, well, not different, but like practices with the family and with people. So the early Joseon was from the beginning of the dynasty, 1392 to 1636, and it was a time characterized by emulation of Chinese culture. It's like they always look up to the Chinese culture, and they wanted to have this Confucianism. But it didn't happen like right away, so it took a lot of time. So during this time, the women, especially the Korean upper class, they had more important roles. And it's important to think about the differences between classes. Like, it was not the same with the ones from the upper class for the ones that were in the lower classes. And for example, one thing that happened during this time was in the genealogy, wives, daughters, and daughters-in-law, they will like register there. And for the children, it didn't matter. Like, they will just register according to the order of birth. And property was divided equally. So it started to happen for the property because during this time, women could practice in ritual ceremonies. They were able to inherit land or inherit property. But after that, because they started to change and apply Confucianism, women could not really practice. So they decided, okay, they are going to have only half of the property. And then they decided, well, it's not good because they are not practicing, they are not doing the rituals, we'll do it just a quarter of the property. And then they decided no more. The reason why, well, I'm talking about the late, but the reason why they decided not to give them more property was because when they had something, when they owned something, or when they had like money maybe, they had more freedom. They were able to decide and they were more independent. So they decided not to give them anything, so they will do what their husbands ask them to do. So they wouldn't have any power. And if there was not a son in the house, the daughters could bring one of their husbands. So they would be like a son-in-law. And they was going to give he was going to leave them. And then, of course, women could remarry. One example of an early Joseon woman is Honan Sohan. I'm sorry for that. And she was from 1563 to 1589. And she is best known for her poetry. During this time, women were not really like expected to write poetry, but she actually had the support of her brothers. They also studied poetry, and in some extent also her father, he supported her as long as that would not interfere with her duties as a woman. And she didn't have a happy conjugal life. Actually, her son died. Well, her kids died. So her family-in-law, they considered her like she was not like a good woman, and she was like, she had a sad life. And I found this in the book. It talks about her, and it says, among the many poems built on the motif of the abandoned woman, the poetess, succeeds because of her polished style and mastery of conventions. So, can anybody help me to read one? This is one fragment of her poetry. Can anyone help me? Please.
Delicate petals of the orchid in the window, so piercing their fragrance. Let the autumn wind just pass through them. They begin to wilt at the cold touch of frost. Their shape begins to change, to fall, but their clear fragrance does not die. Seeing their form, my heart aches, my tears fall, my sleeves are wet.
Thank you. This is one part of her. You can like see. She was not happy. She actually one book says that she was not. Her talent was not considered for that time because she really liked to write and she was not. She was seen as not fully doing her duties as a woman and as a wife. So the late Joseon was from 1636 and 1910, and it was when they actually had all this process of being confusion, and they had differences in the practices, and this is what happened when they became all confusion. So in contrast with the early time, they changed in inheritance. Only the eldest sons could have the main part of the inheritance. Sons, the youngest sons, they could have, but not as much as him. And he was in charge of performing the rituals for the ancestors. And of course, women didn't receive anything because they were considered outsiders, because as soon as they get married, they will be out of the house. So they would no longer belong to the house. And here's what it says. So before they could also participate in the rituals, but at this time, not anymore. Women were not allowed for the rituals. And this is when the practice of adoption increased, because if there were no sons, then the family will adopt, and they would have like heir. Sorry. And so the adoption became increased. And for the genealogy, so before they were registered like according to the order of birth, but after that, daughters were registered at the end of the genealogy. And if a woman could not have a son, it was like a excuse for a man to like divorce her. And it was interesting how they will blame on them, and now that we know that women are not like responsible of giving so in this time, women were not expected to remarry. And the reason why this happened is because when a woman got married, she was supposed to belong to that family. So she was not a part of the family. And if she was going to remarry again, that connection or that bond with the family that she had before was going to be broken. So that was one of the reasons why they couldn't remarry. And one woman of this time, of the latest one, was Lady Hongkyong from 1735 to 1815, and she was the wife of the Crown Prince Saucedo. And so for her, she had a happy childhood, and there is a book, her writing are for memoirs, records, diaries. Writing a memoir was a very unusual activity for a woman at that time, and Lady Hongkyong had to surmount formidable cultural obstacles to do so. So, after she entered the palace, the life there was really hard, and it was because Prince Saucedo, she didn't have a really good relationship with his father. And he started to develop this like kind of mental illness and killing people. So it was really hard for her. And when he died, when her father like took him to the right path, she like should have died also with her husband, but she didn't. And to ask for forgiveness, she wrote all the memory. So this is one part of her writing. So can anybody help me, please? Thank you.
His conduct showed that he was so gravely ill that he did not recognize his 70-year-old mother who remember his love for his children. Lady Sonwi's astonished expression and the children's fearful faces turned as pallid as cold ash. Ah, but an unbearable sight. I wished to turn into a stone and die on the spot. This was not possible. I lived on, but shrank to something less than human.
Thank you. So, if you have the chance to read this book, it's really good. You will have a wide idea of how life was in that time, especially for her. And so now you can see the differences between the dynasty. It was a change that happened for a long time. It wasn't like from one day to the next. So.